Alright, what's up? It's Drake Powell, Black Market 2005. We're digging up past, present, and future of rollerblading with some of your favorite pros and asking them some questions. Peep game, Arlo.
Adam Johnson, I'm 22 years old. I've been rollerblading for 11 years, making videos for 8 years. The main problem with the rollerblade industry wouldn't be the professionals, it's not necessarily the corporations, but it's the lack of income and potential income for rollerbladers. And I stepped back a couple years ago and took it upon myself after Straight Jacket came out. I paid all the Vibrolux team riders and I paid Brian Aragon $500 a piece for section. Not that much, but you figure that most people over the years, like when Louis Zamora did VG14 section, he got paid nothing. There's these professional rollerbladers, and they've done it for the past 11 years. They've been putting literally their lives on the line, and it gets more ridiculous, and the producer pushes them more with each video that comes out. So why is it that the kid that's behind the camera and behind the computer makes all the money, and really all he's doing is showcasing someone else's talent? So I took it upon myself to, forge the way, and it's really starting to bring together a bigger following that either people need to have incentives for videos, people need more incentives, just bust their ass, because a good friend of mine, Yuri Zupancic, doesn't get paid anything for rollerblading, just got admitted to the ICU with severe brain trauma. And just to think of some of the things that I see Alex Brosco and Chris Haffey and all these crazy kids doing, and they get paid pennies. And it's starting to become one of the plagues of our industry. We have too many clothing companies and wheel companies that are run by pretty half-assed individuals that come in offering these professional rollerbladers $250, $300 a month, which to them is like gold because they don't get paid from their clothing company. So they switch boats really easy. We're going to this clothing company, we'll go to this clothing company, I'll change to this wheel sponsor to make money. But in the long runs, it's these sort of corporations who come in with these idle promises because they haven't been there since the beginning. They don't know that the cash flow is not going to be there in 2 or 3 months. So they pay their riders for the first 2 months, take away all the sales from their little regional area, and then, they're forced to pack up shop. And the current state of inline, it's not in a decline in the sense of we're not forming a community. We're a tighter knit group of individuals as of late than we have been over the past 10 years. But it's the fact that there's so little money to be had in rollerblading to have 9 separate wheel companies that produce basically the same quality wheel is ridiculous. All it does is take away from their potential profits. So I think the future of rollerblading holds a much more condensed industry where we'll all be consolidating our resources. Videographers will be teaming up to make the best video, not to make 15 videos a year and put out drab little pieces of trash. We'll actually be able to pull together the resources because there will be these small elite teams of skaters and clothing companies and wheel manufacturers, and it will bring everything back to a smaller community. And from that smaller community, the right people who need to be getting paid will get paid, and it'll return to more of a fan base with rollerblading. Whereas when you go to a skate park nowadays, you have every little kid who skates at skate park thinking that they deserve to have that free t-shirt. They deserve to have free wheels given to them. And granted, they're really good rollerbladers, but it takes away from the role model aspect of rollerblading. I hate to do it, but to compare us to skateboarding, when you go to a skateboard demo, there are hundreds of little kids there, and they're so excited to see their skateboard companions because they just put them up on a pedestal. And right now in rollerblading, we have no pedestal icons. I'm sure you got Brian Shima, you got Aaron Feinberg, but apart from that, there are so many good younger rollerbladers that have all this potential that aren't getting paid and aren't making money. And I don't know, it seems like every crew has their best kid, and they think their best kid should get free stuff, and he starts getting free stuff. And he starts giving away to his friends. And pretty soon, nobody's buying from the major companies, and there's no money to be made. So if professional rollerbladers want to get made or want to make more, they need to realize that they need to be wise who they choose their companies with, who they choose to support, and hopefully the people they support stick in it for the long run, because rollerblading is not dying. Rollerblading can never die, but it's definitely going under, and only the select committed groups of people are going to be able to make it through a budgeting crisis and still have their company around in 5 to 10 years. But it's going to be those companies that are going to be playing the elite riders who stick by their side, and they're going to be making the quality products down the road. So kids out there, you need to choose wisely what you pick up. Just don't buy your friends clothes just because your friend's making clothes. It's pretty ridiculous. You need to support the mainstays, the people who are doing stuff within the industry, whether it be through the RFCC or the IMYTA, back when the IMYTA was running, but people who are taking rollerblading and putting it in a positive direction. Even if you don't necessarily believe in their views, but as long as they're doing something with rollerblading, rather than hopping on rollerblading's back when it's crippled and trying to make a quick buck and jump off before it falls down. Those are the companies you need to stay away with. I come from Kansas City. We have probably one of the most rich traditions aside from Atlanta, Southern California, New York, Philadelphia. We've been around since the beginning, back in '92. Like we had Jeff Belzeski, Greg Dedrick, Dave Temple, Jeremy Morris, Jeremy Rockwell. And I think those guys did a really good job of setting it up for future generations, the way that you pass down common knowledge and courtesy, and just, it dictates a certain level of respect. And I think that's lost in a lot of crews nowadays. You have little subcultures and subgroups of the larger clique. Like take Philadelphia, for example, or Atlanta. There's so many rollerbladers, but yet they're not all united, and I think a lot of ignorance stems from that fact. Like in Kansas, there are probably 2 or 3 groups of kids, but we're working harder nowadays because we forgot to do one main thing, and that's to educate the younger group of kids. Like each one teach one. Everybody needs to find kids in their state and in their city and keep promoting rollerblading, making rollerblading seem cool. You need to draw in kids, and that should be your second major goal in rollerblading. Your first should be to have fun and hang out with your friends and skate, but your second should be constantly recruiting younger people, because if you weren't brought into rollerblading, think what you'd be missing out on. Like, I know I'd be missing out on a lot of stuff, but just the fact that a lot of kids nowadays have no idea what the history is behind rollerblading, I don't think they really appreciate it for what it is, and it leads to a certain level of ignorance when they're forced to deal with situations in rollerblading and make life choices. Like, you can learn a lot from the previous people who have been in rollerblading, like what it's done for them. If you sit down and talk with any old school head, I had the opportunity to talk to Jeff Fredericks a couple nights ago, and we just shot the shit back and forth about stuff from, Hoax 4 and the first Detroit IMYTA, and it's really reassuring taking parts from other people's little subcultures around the country, because that's all rollerblading is, one big subculture, and to not know the identity, the basic identities, the beginnings, the roots of your subculture is pretty ridiculous to me. And I just think that rollerblading would be a lot healthier right now if they realized how far we've come. We wouldn't have kids sitting around thinking about, oh, this is the end of rollerblading. Oh, rollerblading's so whack. Oh, tight pants are so whack. If you had seen how ridiculous Senate Ultra Wides were back in the day, or when we had Janko G's, we looked like these white trash kids that came out of the gutter and slapped on some wheels onto some shoes and started getting all acid heady. What has been done that laid the way for you to be here, kids? If you don't know that, then you don't know a lot of shit. How is it that a businessman who just so happened to have $30,000 to make each boot mold is going to make more money off of a kid's skate, a kid's image, than the person purveying that image, the person going out there risking their lives, and then turn around and, add insult to injury and not even give the kid health insurance for making him, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year? It seems pretty ridiculous to me, and I think it's time that major corporations started stepping up and acting like major corporations and running their businesses as if they were true businesses, like workers' comp, like what happens if a skater, gets deaded and then, oh, sorry, Shima can't skate anymore for the rest of his life. You're never going to give him a pro skate again, but what kind of, workers' comp do you have for Brian Shima? He might have hurt himself just trying to film for your video. Like, how are you going to treat somebody like that? I think it's pretty ridiculous for people to have such high expectations of their riders and to cut them. Like Dustin Halloran, he got cut. You're not performing, you're not in enough magazines, you're not doing enough stunts. Well, what are you doing, and what are you doing to better my situation? That's what every rollerblader needs to ask themselves, is why am I putting my legs on the line, my health, my walking, maybe my brain for pennies a month? It's ridiculous. I made more working at McDonald's than half the professional rollerbladers I know, just working 40 hours a week, and I was never in danger. Sure, I might have got grease on my hands, burnt my hand or done something stupid. But other than, higher cholesterol, I was well off at McDonald's. And Why make these rollerbladers who are some of the most talented individuals on the planet go get a second day job working at Roberto's making California burritos? I don't think it's fair, and I don't think it's fair to have expectations to make them move out to California where it's a higher standard of living and it's, higher cost of living when you're going to pay them the same amount. You're not going to give them any health insurance and you're not going to give them any benefits. I think it's time that people step up and realize that we're running this industry pretty half-assed. And if we get the right people to start running it correctly, I think a lot of things can be implemented to, further us up the ladder of not only media exposure, but bringing in new individuals, making the sport appealing to people. Because no kid wants to know that, oh, you're coming into a sport, and the only way you're ever going to get paid is you have to jump off roofs. But if you hurt yourself, we're never going to pay you, and it's on you to get it fixed. That seems like a ridiculous expectation.
In 1995, the X Games was formed, and from what I've been told through several key individuals who are very, involved at that time, key individuals, that was primarily funded through money that Rollerblade, the corporation, created it with a joint venture with ESPN to make the X Games. So from that field of logic, rollerblading created the X Games. Skateboarding was almost not even included in the X Games at that time because it was so unmarketable. I don't want to say it was at a down point in its history because I don't think it really was, but it was at sort of a lull, a plateau. It was, it was kind of just fumbling along. So 1995, rollerblading came out basically out of nowhere, had total media coverage. Arlo Eisenberg was everywhere. Skating was on TV all over the place. And it's funny, now we are 10 years later, we're not even a part of the X Games. We've sort of gotten excluded. And people would argue all day back and forth, what are the reasons, the motives. And as someone who wasn't, making those things happen, I can't say firsthand, but I can say that for all the negative marketing that other industries have put towards rollerblading to keep us down for whatever reason, whether they're threatened of our similarities to their roots, and which have obviously been successful, so you could say that means that we're ensured success in the future, or whether it's simply because they really do think what we do is simple, or easy, or inferior to what they do because we've been influenced by other sports, just as pretty much every other person in this world is influenced by something. They've marketed against us, they've tried to hold us down, and so. But all this time, there's never ever been any marketing by rollerblading, not only to counter maybe what these people are saying about us, but to the very least to promote ourselves in a positive light, which I think paints the picture of rollerblading as a very reactionary industry. People are always waiting for feedback and then deciding what to do, and it doesn't seem like people are very, and I'm probably guilty of this right now and over the past years, anybody else, of trying to just completely ignore what's going on and think solely in the future, sort of in the bubble, and what do we want ideally? What's our best case scenario? Have our best momentum we've ever had because there's the most talented people that have gone through the most time, have stuck through the bad times. So it's hopefully weeded out those people that were just in it because it was on TV and because I can make a couple $1,000s a month doing this and that and just dicking around and getting some clips here and there.
My name's TJ Weber. Grassroots is the core of any sport like this. And I think skating ultimately will follow the same cycle that BMXing and skateboarding did back in the 80s and early 90s. It's going to fall to the bottom, and because it's at the bottom, it's going to become cool for being uncool.
My name is Arlo Eisenberg. I'm 31 years old, which is very old in rollerblading years. I've been skating for about 15 years. I won the X Games in 1996. And I was named by People as one of 50 to watch in 2000. I am going to talk about the X Games. In the interest of full disclosure, I have to tell you that I was fired from the X Games 2 years ago. So, whatever biases I may have, or that might show up in my commentary, I just want them to be out in the open. And I'll tell you the getting fired story too, in a bit, because it's good. But before I talk about what's wrong with the X Games, because there are some things wrong with the X Games, I'll talk about what's wrong with rollerblading first. The first X Games were in 1995, and yes, rollerblading was a big part of the inaugural X Games and getting that whole thing off the ground. And usually when people mention that, they'll say it like, well, then isn't that a slight or a big slap in the face? Now that rollerblading is out of the X Games, it's like, everybody was happy to use rollerblading when, when there was a lot of hype around it. It was this new thing. And after I came out to California and, and everybody started doing their things and we started creating the magazines, Daily Bread, Box Magazine, we had the first hoax video. The first inline contest was the NIST series, was in 1994. That was only 1 year after I moved out here. And the X Games was in 1995, the first X Games. So from 93 to 95, that's when we got our first magazine, our first video, our first contest. This is a sport in its infancy, brand new. And then here come the first X Games for a worldwide televised audience. And they're going to put our sport in prime time, right next to skateboarding, which has been out for decades. And right next to BMX, same thing, decades of history. Skateboarding had Tony Hawk. BMX had Matt Hoffman. You could say, and people do, that inline had me, but it's not the same thing. I'd been in California for 2 years. I'd probably been in one video. Who knows how many issues of Daily Bread or Box had come out? 1? 2? The trick vocabulary was 3 tricks. Front side, back side, and sole. That was rollerblading. So when skateboarders or BMXers were pissed off that inline was there on the same stage as them, celebrated at the same level, they were right to be pissed off. We did not deserve to be there. But we didn't ask to be there. ESPN gave us that forum, and who are we to say no? It was a great opportunity. And what did we know? We were brand new. We didn't know anything. But so what happened is that sowed the seeds of resentment. They hated us. Not just because we didn't deserve to be there, and they resented us because we were sharing that stage, taking that limelight away from them, and because we were imposters to that throne, but because we really did look back. Our tricks were unrefined. I said we had a limited vocabulary, and it wasn't very good looking. Most of us didn't have much style. I mean, we'd land with our legs all over the place, our hands waving in the air. I mean, rollerblading was not that rad of a thing back then. And I was doing it. I was one of the best at the time, so don't get me wrong. I mean, I love the sport, and I'm proud of our roots and our history and everything, but it was unrefined. And it's a lot different than what's happening right now. I will put rollerblading up against any other sport in the world right now. You give me the best skateboarder, the best freestyle BMX rider on a vert ramp or on street. I'll put the best rollerblader, I'll put the best 10 rollerbladers against their best guy anywhere in the fucking world. You take me to a spot. No, I'll take you to 100 spots that you can't even take a skateboarder to. You can't take a BMXer to. There is no sport right now that's as impressive, as dangerous, or as beautiful when it's done right as rollerblading. And that's the whole irony of the whole thing. When we didn't deserve to be there, we had the stage. And now that we finally got to a point where there's a trick vocabulary, there's superstars, there's Shima, there's Happy, there's the Yasutokos. I mean, this is an incredible sport. This is something that people should see. And now that we've finally gotten here, we're out. And we're out because of that residual resentment that's been hung over. It's been building up to this. It's like this groundswell of hate and resentment towards rollerblading. It's just been building up over the years. And as skateboarding's gotten more powerful, and the BMXers have gotten more powerful and more influence and more weight, this resentment has turned back on inline to the point where they are able to exercise their influence. And the television producers and the people that are listening to these guys, they believe it. Yeah, rollerblading's not as cool as skateboarding. Why are we spending time on this when we could be getting a better return on our investment if we focus the energy we had in inline on skateboarding? As shitty as everything is right now, the current state of affairs, I mean, rollerblading has no love, okay? It's an important part of the process. I mean, so it's this weird position where you have to have two minds about it. I mean, if you're going to be an objective, rational observer, you step outside of it a second and you say, okay, I know that this is an important part of the process. You got to weed out all the bullshit. You got to trim the fat and make it a lean sport. Right now, the people that rollerblade only do it because they love it. They're not getting any friends from it. They're not getting any girls from it. No one's high-fiving them on the street going, that's cool. I mean, the only people that do it right now love it. And that's important, because from that you're able to build a strong foundation and a strong base, so that as people do start glomming onto it, you know that the core is solid. We never had that before. That's part of the reason that it was so easily rattled. Rollerblading's foundation right now is very solid. I mean, we've had a couple of years of this now, of really just sort of being on our own. I mean, Daily Bread deserves so much credit for, I mean, Daily Bread really was one of the very first aggressive skating things exclusively, you know, in the world. Before anything really, the first thing that was like uniquely aggressive skating really was Daily Bread. And it's still there. And you know that magazine's not getting a lot of support. And there's not a whole lot of advertising dollars to go around, not in our industry, not outside of our industry. But my point is that I'm talking about the things that are there, the things that are weathering this storm, are doing it because they love it. And that means that it's solid. And so that when the money does start coming back to it, the people that will be there in a position to take advantage of it, you know that they have our best interest at heart. And you couldn't say that about the industry when it was brand new. I mean, there was so much money flying around that people were jumping into it, and no one cared about rollerblading.
But even
Wait. There's something else. So it's a necessary part of the process, this weeding out. Doesn't make it any less shitty. Doesn't mean we have to be content with it. I mean, a part of our job, our role throughout this is to maintain the struggle, is to fight, not to be content with being shit on. It's just important somewhere in the back of your mind to know that it's making us stronger. And so what will happen when you talk about coming back to the mainstream, or what is rollerblading's future in the big picture? Rollerblading is not going anywhere. Street luge was dropped out of the X Games before we were, probably a couple of years before we were. The bungee jumping, kayak bungee jumping, whatever it was as a sport, was dropped out of the X Games after the first year. Never heard about it again. I don't know. I know people still bungee jump at the mall, but you never hear of it as a sport. I'm sure there are a couple of hardcore guys out there that street luge still, but I would be surprised to hear that they still have a circuit or anything that's anything more formalized than a couple of guys going out and doing it, you know, midnight runs or something. But rollerblading has not gone anywhere, and rollerblading is not going anywhere. It's too strong. There's too many people that do it, and the reason why is, one, because it's easy, which has always been people always try to throw it out like it's some mark against it, but no, it's fun to do. You can get in them and start skating and have fun. And it makes no, because it's easy to get into, places no limit on how far you can take it. I mean, you only need to open up a magazine or watch a video these days to see the answer to that. But people love it. Too many people love it too much in too many places for it to go anywhere. And you know, this reminds me of an interesting point. Our plight in the U.S., this is going to sound so ridiculous and gay to say, but really does honestly have a lot to do with the X Games. By cutting out that exposure versus skateboarding and BMX, by not just by showing people skateboarding and BMX and reinforcing that idea that those things are cool, but also at the same time by not showing rollerblading, you're not just saying to people, you're not just ignoring it, because yeah, people aren't seeing it, they're not being exposed to rollerblading, we're not recruiting new numbers. But when they do see a rollerblader, that hasn't been reinforced anywhere as something cool. And the fact that they don't see it next to skateboarding and BMX makes them think, well, there must be something wrong with rollerblading. And so ESPN really has cultivated this culture and this mentality of hate and ignorance, where people actually not only don't understand rollerblading, but they really don't respect it. They don't think that it's something worthy of respect, because that's the message that they're being sent. even when we were a part of the X Games, we weren't in the commercials. You show Bob Burnquist, you show Tony Hawk, they show Dave Mirra. They don't show a rollerblader in the commercials. Even when we were in the X Games, when they show it on TV, they'll show hours of skateboarding segments. They'll show hours of BMX segments. But don't blink, because you'll miss the inline. They're not showing a whole lot of inline, even when we were in the X Games. So all these things are constantly reinforcing this idea that inline is inferior to the other sports. Which, by the way, is why I got fired from ESPN. Every year, I've been announcing the X Games, okay? I go and I do the play-by-play for the TV broadcast with Mark Shays. When the guys are doing their runs, dropping in, whatever, I'm the voice on TV going, wow, great run from Takeshi Yasutoko, 540, whatever, all this BS. And I've done that for several years. And every year before we go to the X Games, they have what they call a talent meeting. They bring in all the guys that are going to do the broadcast for the TV show. Skateboard commentators, BMX, motocross, all the different things. And same thing every year. They bring us in, we go to the hotel, the host hotel where we're all staying. They bring us into a conference room. Producers come in and talk to us about this year's event, new technology. They tell us, they give us a crash course in editing. There's going to be L cuts, whatever. I don't know what they talk about. But so this year, this infamous year that I'm talking about right now, which was 2 years ago, we go into the conference room, and the guy, Rich Feinberg, the producer, what was his title? Vice President of Sports, who knows? But he was the producer responsible for hosting and steering this production meeting. And he starts out the thing with a video cassette. He says, listen, I had my staff put together this video of highlights from last year's X Games. I think it's really great. I'm really proud of it. My staff worked really hard on it, and I think it's going to get everyone fired up for this year's X Games. So he puts in the tape, turns down the lights, and the ESPN commentator, they've got it voiced over, with his scruffy voice. He's like, Travis Pastrana had to go for the backflip in the X Games, and it's like gritty, slow motion film. It's like they really did. They went all out on this little 3-minute video that they're showing us. And it goes through. It shows Travis Pastrana doing his backflip. And, whatever. Tony Hawk, whatever. It goes through things, it goes through all the different things. And they never show rollerblading. And they show, and they didn't show a whole lot of wakeboarding. Maybe they showed a couple of shots of a wakeboarder. But there was not even a single throwaway shot of a rollerblader. Not even a flash of Ato looking at the camera. I think the year before, maybe Ty Chris had done his double backflip, which was pretty momentous for us. But nothing. No mention of anything rollerblading. And this wasn't even for the general public. This was just a little 3-minute thing to show his staff. And he knew that that Mark Shays and I were going to be there, that we're part of this staff. We're part of the X Games. Rollerblading hadn't been dropped yet. And as I'm watching this, and it becomes clear to me that that rollerblading is not going to show up, I'm like seething, And this is, mind you, this is not just the first slight of this sort. I mean, this is after years of watching X Games commercials and waiting for the rollerblading one. Waiting to see some rollerblader hanging out at 7-Eleven with Tony Hawk and Dave Mirra, talking about the X Games, in their fucking commercials. It never happens. And so on top of all this, and now this thing, I've got to suffer this indignity. And so I was furious. And he turns back on the lights. And he's like, yeah, what'd you guys think? And I didn't know what to do. And I felt like I had to do something. And so all I can muster, my idea of a protest, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to walk out right now. And I did. I stood up and I walked out. That was it. That was my protest. And I walked out of there and I'm like, well, what the fuck am I doing? I don't know. I walked to the bathroom. I'm standing there looking in the mirror. So I go back in the room. Realizing now that it just looks like I got up and I went to the bathroom. I mean, some protest, no one even knows that I protested. But if nothing else, it did cool me off a little bit, so I sat down for the meeting. and I'm able to pay attention. Rich goes on with the presentation. He's talking about this stuff. He's talking about the new technology. And he says, we've got some really great new technology this year. We're going to have the cable cam coming over the whole street course. And he's talking about the different things. And he says, and we're going to do something new this year that we've never done before. We've always talked about. He said, but I've got to tell you, we tried a lot of different things. He said, we're going to have a follow cam. We're going to have follow cam footage on the street course, which is something that we've always been advocating, something everybody's always wanted, because it's good to get that close-up, intimate feel on the street course. It really makes the tricks look better. He said, so we're going to have a follow cam this year on the street course. He said, but I got to tell you guys, and he's now talking to the whole room. He said, I got to tell you guys, we tried everything. We thought about a lot of different ways to get this, and it just so happens that the best way to get the footage is by having an inliner on the course. And that really sent me over the edge. He said, so, just so you know, skateboarders, he's talking to the skateboarding commentators, there's going to be an inliner out there, just so you know, bike riders. And basically, he's apologizing for the fact that there's going to be an inliner on the course getting this follow cam footage. So no mention in the commercials, no mention in the little teaser tape, but the first fucking time that this guy's going to mention inline in front of a room of his entire staff, and with me sitting there, and Mark Shea sitting there, he's apologizing for my sport.
You and Mark say anything, or you and Mark exchanging any words or anything at all, or just...
This time I turned my back to him, and I picked up a newspaper and I started reading it. I picked up my newspaper, like this. I mean, I was furious, fucking pissed, out of my mind. And finally he says to me, because, this is a conference room. I've got my back to the guy. He knows something's up. He says, Arlo, don't you think you should be paying attention to the meeting instead of reading the newspaper? So there he gave me my window, and I guess I jumped through it. I said, why? He said, what do you mean, why? I said, this is bullshit. And he said, oh. He said, what's bullshit? And I told him. I told him what I told you. I told him about the tape. I said, you showed this tape, which you're so proud of. Not a single shot of a rollerblader. And then the first time you mentioned rollerblading, you're apologizing for it. And everybody in the room laughed when he said it. He said, it just so happens we got, or whatever he said. He said some stupid thing, and a guy chuckled out of the room, because there was going to be an inliner on the street course. And they all had a big laugh about it. I didn't think it was funny. And so I told him, the first time you mentioned it, you apologized for it, and you guys all have a big laugh about rollerblading. I said, listen, I'm not here just to be some talking head on TV. I'm not here because I like talking about rollerblading on TV. I said, I'm here because I love the sport. I said, and at some point, it just gets to be too much. It's too overwhelming. I can't sit by, while you guys constantly disrespect my sport, what I love to do. And he said, well, we can talk about this after the meeting. I said, okay. And after the meeting, I walked out. I felt like I'd said whatever I had to say. If he wanted to talk about it, he could, but I wasn't going to go up to him, and I left. Later, at some mandatory talent dinner, he came up to me, and it was real uncomfortable because we hadn't spoken since that, and it was kind of like, everybody was kind of like all hushed. And he comes up to me at the dinner. I'm sitting in my seat, all awkward. He's like, so are you cool? Something like that. Like, am I cool? And he puts his hand out, and what am I going to do? So I shake his hand, but it's totally inadequate. And we went ahead and did the thing. And then half a year later, 6 months later, I get an email from ESPN. One line, basically, it says, we've decided to go in another direction for next year's inline thing. That's it. After... 10 years. How long was I with them? 95? No. Whatever it was. Almost 10 years, probably, yeah. Oh, yeah, in fact, I probably was fired for the 10th X Games. It would have been 10 years. From competing to commentating, won. I had a lot of history with them. And you know what offended me most of all about it? I mean, I don't know. I was only mad because I love rollerblading. I mean, you would think if they cared about rollerblading, that they would want people there who cared about rollerblading. They want to have the best product they can have. They want the people there for skateboarding to care about skateboarding. My enthusiasm for rollerblading, my feelings for rollerblading, can only make their end product better. I want it to look good for them. What hurt me most was their response to me only confirmed what I knew all along, that they don't care about rollerblading. They don't care about me, they don't care about rollerblading, and you know what was the ultimate proof? Rollerblading was gone the next year. And so in a way, lucky fucking me, I didn't even have to suffer the disrespect, the indignity of being dropped with my sport. I didn't have to suffer them saying, you know what, we don't want you guys anymore. I told them this is bullshit, and they fired me on my fucking terms. At least I got out with my dignity. But you know what? I get angry and I get emotional about it, and I want it to be clear that this is a reflection more of my feelings for rollerblading than my feelings towards the X Games or ESPN. Because listen, ESPN and the X Games, it is what it is. They are what they are. And that's fine. I don't need the X Games to be Daily Bread. I don't need the X Games to be Video Groove or, I don't need them to be responsible for, the culture of our sport or any of those things. So there may come a time, talking about the mainstream, that I'm so angry right now that it's hard to imagine ever doing anything with them again. Who knows, maybe they don't ever want us again. But you have to believe that if all things followed their course, if we stayed on this trajectory where inline is what it is, it's as impressive as it is, whatever people's feelings are about the sport now, they can't maintain those feelings forever. Skateboarders used to hate BMX. And then you know what happened? Matt Hoffman happened. 900s, backflips, flares, 20 feet out of a quarter pipe. I mean, you can only say something's gay for so long, and then when the evidence accumulates and gets to be so much, there's a point where you look like an idiot if you tell Matt Hoffman that he's a fag. What he's doing is just irrefutable. It's undeniable. Same thing's going to happen with rollerblading. I mean, you can only watch so many kids do a 100-foot drop-off ledge before at some point you say, you know what, I can't really call that gay anymore. It's too dangerous. And so that will happen. But what we know, we're on the cutting edge, we have our finger on the pulse. What we know right now, it's going to take other people 2 years to know. So while we're all going, hell yeah, inline is sick, why don't people see it? Well, they're not watching our videos. They don't read our magazines. Not only are they not watching them, they don't want to see them. They like keeping this image of a rollerblader with big jeans and a giant chain coming out of his pocket, stumbling around a street course. They don't want to know that it might be something really cool and legitimate and credible. But they can only deny it for so long. At some point, the evidence will become too overwhelming. And at that point, we'll have to reevaluate our position. ESPN will reevaluate our position, or whoever's comparable to ESPN at that point. And I find it hard to believe that inline won't be embraced back into the mainstream at some point. It's just a matter of time. Is it 5 years from now, 10 years from now, or 2 years from now? So the current state of things right now is that rollerblading is, by all appearances and by any standard, underground. I mean, we are strictly underground. The only people that do it, the only people that know about it, are people that do it. I think the only people that do it are the people that do it. But the point is that rollerblading is strictly underground. It's only rollerbladers. There aren't people like hanging on to it. We don't have groupies. And the only people that know about it are the people that do it. We have a closed network right now. It's not being seen outside of rollerblading. It's not being seen out of our own videos and our own magazines. You won't find it on TV. And there are people who will say, good, rollerblading's better off being strictly underground. They look at ESPN, they look at the skateboarders, fat pig skateboarders, and they go, I don't want to become that, you know? More money than they know what to do with. Looks like there's no soul. Looks like it's all grind, and you know that movie Grind that they made. You know, it's in the action sports world, in action sports culture, the worst thing you can tell anyone is that they sold out. I mean, we place such a premium on being genuine, on keeping it real, you know, all that stuff. And so people look at skateboarding, rollerbladers look at skateboarding, and they go, you know what? They sold out. And it looks like it, you know, selling pizza tacos on TV and you know, the biggest video game right now and the movies and everything. I mean, it really does look like, you know, this is a sport, a culture that's gotten way too fat for its own good. And it's become obscene and gross with its size. And so the people say, well, good, let us stay underground. Let rollerblading stay underground because it's more virtuous. There's something more credible about that. We're keeping it real. But I think that that's bullshit. Because what they're mistaking, because when they look around, you see 20 kids at a skate park and none of them know how to skateboard, and they've all got the newest BAM, you know, skateboard deck, and they've got the whatever, the BAM shoes or whatever they're all wearing. And rollerbladers take pride in knowing that when they see another rollerblader, usually they're looking at someone that's a lot like them, you know, that's in the know, that's cool. And skateboarding used to be like that. But let me tell you something, that at the core of skateboarding are skateboarders just like rollerbladers that you know. They're still there. They haven't gone anywhere. And in fact, those kids, those 20 kids that you see at the skate park, well, they may have nothing to do with those core skateboarders. It's not like they're hanging out at the same places, that those guys aren't friends, but those 20 kids are paying for those skateboarders to make a living doing what they love. And we don't have those 20 kids supporting us. And we're not going to get them staying underground so that Chris Haffey or Aaron Feinberg, who just got fired from his sponsor, one of the greatest rollerbladers we have in the history of our sport of all time, he can't even get paid. He can't even get thrown a bone from his sponsor because there's no money in this industry. And when people say, cool, it's cool that we're underground, I say, fuck that. What these guys do is too dangerous. I mean, I think it's cool that the only people who do it now are doing it for the love, that the only reason people have to skate right now is doing it for the love. But when I watch a video with Alex Broskow and Chris Haffey and Brian Sheeman, what these guys do and how dangerous it is, and when you hear about what they're getting paid, I mean, you're talking about hundreds of dollars, maybe 1,000 something, if they're doing good. I mean, you've got to be kidding me. And they're not getting health insurance or anything like that. These are people risking their lives because they love it, which is rad. Good, I'm glad. But don't tell me good that we're underground, let's keep it that way. Those guys should be getting paid. I mean, you've got third-rate skateboarders making millions of dollars on shoes. They don't even have to skateboard. Their name can sell the shoes for years. And Aaron Feinberg is getting dropped by his sponsor. It's cool to be cool. Do that. Don't say keep rollerblading underground. Say, you know what, I'm going to stay underground. Don't keep rollerblading off of ESPN. You stay off of ESPN. I think it's important to always have a core. But it's also important to reach out to the mainstream and to try and keep money moving in through the core so that it can sustain itself. If you're going to be a viable industry, and that's what we want to be. You don't want to just be 2 or 3 skaters in every city with nowhere to buy product, no products to buy, no companies to buy them from, just sitting around, you know, jacking each other off about the new latest combo that they did on the handrail. I mean, there's got to be money, and that money has to come from somewhere. And we can't just keep giving it back and forth to each other. You have to grow the sport.
All right, my name is Brandon Hardin. Most of you in the rollerblading industry know me as B Love. The fitness skating is dead. So companies aren't making as much money as they used to. Anytime you're a corporation and your numbers are going down, you know, shit is not good. So they cut everywhere they can. And that and sales have gone down, and they're just going down. It's going to take shit like that. It's going to happen with every company, you know. I was actually shocked whenever a couple of years ago I was talking to the K2 team and finding how much they were getting paid per month, and compared it to what I was making, you know, whenever I was skating. And we're talking percentages difference, less than half, you know. In fact, they're making per month. Whenever I got a contract that was that per month, I was like, hell no, you know. I called everybody and was like, they're not doing this to us, and fought back and actually got it back up, you know. But that's whenever they were making money off fitness skating, you know. The thing is like, they were selling fitness skates like pancakes, you know, like Waffle House waffles. Everybody was buying fitness skates. So all that money got dumped into aggressive skating, because aggressive skating was also getting big. And, you know, now that fitness skating has died off, you know, the aggressive industry is suffering for it, you know, because now everything is going down. It's not as good as it used to be. You go out, and I'm right now suffering from skating, you know, and I have no money left over from skating, you know, nothing to show for it except for, you know, a couple of pages in a magazine and video shoots. So it sucks. It would be nice for the money to come back up and for them to actually, you know, justify getting it. You know, health insurance is a great point. I think that any skater for a company, they should do something about their health insurance. But there's something wrong with that too. We're talking about how we are doing with health insurance these days. Small companies, you know, with employees of 20 or less, are paying so much for insurance, especially here in California, that they can't even afford to insure their employees anymore. Insurance itself is like a huge problem. I mean, that's just going down the tube. So, you know, you have to start there. It's a whole political deep conversation that, you know, that I definitely don't know enough about to come up with a formulated opinion.
I'm Chris Edwards. At the time, none of us were looking up to anybody. We were just looking up to creating something. And we were all looking at the same thing. We're young, and we definitely, for sure, were exploited as an industry. Oh, you want to know how old I am? You don't need to know that. Do you know how old rollerblading is? That's how old I am.